we've sort of been blurring the lines in our Thomistic analysis here, but
yes,
the formal cause, which is kind of like the recipe, and maybe that's part of what's so cool about this is that the material cause is the formal cause.
Ooh.
And that's actually sublime because when form and content come together, then you get something very special. And I think that if you get the material cause right, if you get the quality pork, sufficient fat, sufficient salt, you're done. That is the recipe.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to get a little more creative and, make sausages the flavor of which you would recognize, I could give you some guidelines as to recipes, actual spicing profiles. So this is more formal cause stuff.
Okay.
And for these, again, I don't have individual recipes. I've recorded tons of them because I'm trying to stumble upon something that works. And I sort of have, I guess. But really, I think that the funnest and the most rewarding thing is to season your sausages seasonally and use your garden. So for us, I can give you an example because gardens are so regional, but my favorite things to plant in our garden for sausage are sage, parsley is number one favorite for sausage, and sorrel, which grows like a weed up here at least. And just plant herbs, please. You can do coriander and harvest this. So you can plant cilantro, let it go to seed, and just harvest the seeds. Let them dry out. Those are really delicious. Plant herbs. There's really, plant marjoram, plant thyme. Lots of, we're talking rows. Get serious.
With herbs.
Lots.
Yeah,
you need mass quantities. This is not like I'm going to season my eggs in the morning. This is, we want buckets of herbs.
Yeah.
Especially parsley. Because you can almost not use too much parsley with pork. It's so mild and unassuming. It just lifts up whatever you put it in. So that's my favorite way. That's number one. Fresh herbs for seasoning the fresh sausages is so good. Garlic, onions are also great. That's kind of your fall sausage, right? When everything is just popping. Summer sausages that you might make. But then there is going to come a time when all those leafy greens they're gone. They're nowhere. At least if you don't have a greenhouse and you live up where I do, and you're not a very good winter gardener. In which case you will have to rely on dried spices, and that's all right. The dried spices are easy to come by. That is the advantage of those. So you could just get on Amazon and order from Frontier, these bulk spices, and they will come to you, and they'll be wonderful. Now, there is a danger with the dried spices. Unlike fresh herbs, which you can just be magnanimous with, seasoned by the handful. I never weigh it. I don't weigh it with the fresh herbs. It's just mountains of parsley. Go for it. You might have to watch out for sage. You can chop a little too much sage. And I like to chop all these green herbs, by the way. The point I'm trying to make is you can really be very, you don't have to be as precise with the fresh herbs. They're so good. There's so much diversity in flavor in a single fresh herb that it's not going to overwhelm and take over and be unpleasant. Dried spices, on the other hand, it is very likely that will happen. And it is one thing to make a sausage that tastes real good. When you make your batch and you mix it and you salt it, and before you stuff it, it's a good idea to taste a patty. It's one thing to make a sausage that tastes real good when you do that sample, right? You're going to taste it and be like, oh yeah, that paprika is awesome. So good. And then you stuff it in a lynx and it happens to be 50 pounds of sausage and it takes you 3 months to eat all of it. By week 3, you are done with paprika. You are over it. And that is very common. So I think that when it comes to spicing with dried spices, it is worthwhile to develop a strategy for sausages that taste good for the long haul, for long term. That means you must achieve a harmony. We get real bored with narcissistic spices, with egotists. So when it's just paprika or there's too much cumin, it's not good.
Yeah.
Again, it tastes good when you fry up that sample because it kind of like zaps you, like, woo, hey, that's cool. But then like it does not withstand prolonged dinners over the next 3 months. So that's when you crave something a little more subtle, which is also more complex, which is what a harmony is. Because we are wired, and I think we prefer the total more than the parts. And that's what you can achieve with a harmony. So here's a ratio that I can give you that works real well, that I developed by excavating this guy's stuff. Maynard Davies, The Manual of a Traditional Baking Cure. He talks all about the importance of the harmony of spices. That is the key. So that when you taste the sausage, you're not actually tasting any one spice. You are tasting the sum of the parts, which is more than the parts. And that is the definition of a harmony. And here's the ratio. And again, this is best done with dried spices. Fresh herbs from your garden are difficult to weigh, they're difficult to measure, and it's just less consequential. Just use them by handfuls. They're complex and delicious enough on their own right. You don't need to be this precise. As long as everything is salted 2% by weight and you've got 30% fat, have fun with the spices. They're not going to be as decisive as you might think, especially if they're coming from your garden. But it is possible to over-season with the dried spices. And by those, before we talk about how to make the harmony, the instruments I'm talking about are white pepper, black pepper, paprika, cayenne, nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, fennel seed, coriander, mace, which is not nutmeg, but just one part of it, and cumin, caraway seed, all kinds of stuff.
Are you talking about just things that we put in sausage?
Yeah, spices.
Spices in particular.
Dried spices,
Okay.
not stuff from the garden.
We have put like apples and syrup and
Right.
like more substantial solid things, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay. And then there's also all the liquid stuff you could put in there.
Okay.
But as to these dried spices, those tend to be the ones that hang out in my shop a lot.
Yeah.
And I do prefer the ones that have a slightly more, I won't go there. So here's the ratio. Here's the harmony, the key to harmony. And it's going to be, one tricky thing is that it does necessitate a very precise scale that can weigh really tiny quantities, crazy tiny, especially if you're making batches that are smaller than 30 pounds.
Yeah.
But it's worth it, because this will create a sausage that will taste good to you for a very long time, and it joins in with the rest of the ingredients of your meal, rather than being like, hey, I'm a sausage! And taking over,
Yeah.
So, so the way I figure it, and again, I got this by sort of like interpreting Maynard. Weigh the salt. So let's say you weigh the ground meat mass, okay? Before you've seasoned it, there's just ground flesh with the fat in there, also ground. And you weigh it, and you get 30 pounds. And you say, okay, 2% salt by weight is what, 0.6 pounds of salt, okay? So you don't need to weigh because just over half a pound of salt, 0.6 pounds. So we're going to create our harmony of spices relative to the weight of the salt.
Got it.
Not to the weight of the meat.
Yeah.
Which is common and good. For whatever reason, this is just how I worked it out, to the weight of the salt. And so 0.6 pounds of salt to season your 30 pounds of meat. Delicious. So if you want a particular spice to be a little forward, but again, not annoying at the 10th time you eat the sausage.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the max, to where you can add this spice, people will taste that spice, but it will never be annoying.
Yeah.
It will never be too much. And that particular magic ratio is 1 ounce of the spice to 1 pound of salt. So in our example, it's 0.6 of an ounce.
Sure. Okay.
We have 0.6 of a pound of salt, 0.6 an ounce of white pepper, let's say. White pepper will be forward.
Right.
And you'll find with the milder spices, you might be able to go 2 ounces to a pound of salt. So you could probably do 1.2 ounces of white pepper to our 0.6 pounds of salt in our example.
Wait, why would you do
And that's because white pepper is a milder pepper.
Oh, so
right?
you're
than
separating...
black.
I got it. Okay.
But that's getting ahead of ourselves. So we've got the forward spice should be 1 ounce to a pound. You can just remember that. 1 ounce to a pound.
Okay.
Is to 1 pound of salt, 1 ounce of the forward spice.
Okay.
And then if you want to add more, you would, and again, as with dried spices, to create the harmony, you can do 2 or 3 more without it becoming mud, right?
Yes.
Without it becoming overly spiced. And when that happens, you get kind of this, it's a mysterious flavor, but it's just too spiced. It's not right. And it's a quarter of an ounce to a pound of salt.
Okay. For the 2 or 3 more lesser
That's right.
spices.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the 2 or 3 more spices that you want. So let's say you're going to add a total of 4 spices.
And those 2 or 3 more, would they be only milder spices, or could you use a...
Whatever. This is actually where the strong spices go.
Okay.
So it's a good starting place if you're going to make a hot sausage.
Oh, okay.
To say, well, I'll mix it with, let's say you have cayenne as your source of heat, at a quarter of an ounce of cayenne to a pound of salt, and mix that, fry it up, and then taste it and see what you like the spice level, and then come up on your spice level, and then go to half an ounce or to a pound of salt, or 1 ounce to a pound of salt even, and see if you like that. So when you have this, in our example, we have 0.6 of an ounce of white pepper, and then
Per pound of salt.
yes,
Right?
right,
Or I guess it would be 0.6 pounds of salt.
That's
because
right.
we're doing 30 pounds of
yeah, it's 0.6
meat.
pounds of salt, and then a quarter of an ounce of a pound of salt. So I don't know what a quarter of 0.6 is, but we could say a third, which is 0.2.
Okay.
And so in this case, I tend to do like a quarter of an ounce per pound at that rate. Maybe coriander, and then mace, which is that one you definitely don't want to overdo.
That's pretty
the pie
strong.
Spices,
Right.
clove, nutmeg, don't overdo.
Cinnamon, yeah.
Don't overdo paprika.
Yeah.
Paprika is strange because it's mild. It's not hot, especially like sweet smoked paprika.
Yes.
It's not like, wow, this is spicy. No. It's actually not spicy at all. And it might taste good the first time you fry it up, but man, it has a way of overwhelming you with repeated consumption. And you're just very done with paprika. So,
Yes. Well, and you mastered that actually when we did our Mangalitsa pigs this year. We had some customers saying it's very easy to overdo paprika, and you did it.
and that's because I followed this ratio.
Yes.
I followed this. With those, because those were a Hungarian recipe, I think I did the paprika at an ounce per pound. And that was not too much. It was the dominant flavor, but it wasn't too much.
Okay. My student brain is kicking in here.
Yeah.
I want to make it easier for people to
Yeah.
get this. So if you've got a pound of salt,
Yeah.
because let's not work with a particular example.
Okay.
Let's work with, you have a pound of salt. For every pound of salt, you do 1 ounce of your dominant spice.
That's right.
We'll say, and that dominant spice can be either mild or strong.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
it's up to you.
Okay. I might even.
That's the neat thing about this is that these are the maximum tolerable. They're not maximums. This keeps it well within the range of tolerability. So even if you mess it up and you put in spices that you don't like, it's not going to ruin the sausage.
So this is to develop a harmony.
This is for
A
harmony.
meat harmony.
That's
okay.
right.
So if you have a pound of salt, it's an ounce of your dominant spice, which can be either mild or strong. Then you have 2 or 3 lesser.
At a quarter of an ounce to a pound of salt.
At a quarter. Lesser spices, and that's a quarter ounce each. And those lesser spices can be... This is where you would actually...
Do the punchy ones.
Suggest the stronger spices.
You could do some punchy, but you can also do mild. I mean... But this is where I would start with the punchy ones.
Okay. Emphasize the stronger ones.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where you would put... Would you ever put a paprika as that more dominant spice? Or would you only maybe...
I did for the Mangalitsa shares.
That's right. But it just wasn't too overpowering.
But it's not... Yeah, that 1 ounce to a pound keeps it in the realm of tolerability.
Because it's mild or strong on that dominant one. And then
you won't surfeit of it.
But you don't want to do more than 4 total spices or you get into mud territory.
Usually. Yeah, unless you're real creative. Yeah.
Okay. And that's kind of like what Maynard did with his Cumberland.
More or less. Right? I summarized all of his sausage recipes and worked with them for a while, made different variations, and I derived this from him. Yeah. Can't exactly remember how.
Okay. I like that. I like math. So that makes it's like a formula.
Yeah, it is a formula. So forward spice, 1 ounce to a pound of salt. Background harmony spices, 1/4 of an ounce to a pound of salt.
Yeah.
And in our example, like a classic pork sausage, it's just real British style, good stuff, would be, you could do white, if we use our 30 pound batch, that is 0.6 pounds of salt. So you could do 0.6 ounce of white pepper.
Yeah.
And then at 1/4 of an ounce, you could do, which would be to a pound of salt, which would be 0.15 ounces.
Oh, you worked it out?
Yeah. Okay. With my calculator. In this case, you could do 0.15 ounces of mace, 0.15 ounces of coriander, and 0.15 ounces of sage.
Yep.
And so that's just one recipe you could try out to see this harmony notion working. 30 pounds of sausage, 0.6 pounds of salt, 0.6 ounces of white pepper, 0.15 ounces of mace, 0.15 ounces of coriander, 0.15 ounces of sage. That is a delicious sausage right there.
Is that your Cumberland? Or is that something else?
That's pretty close to it.
You're just
I do more
riffing.
white. I'm riffing, but I do more. You can plug any in. That's the cool. It's such a flexible mechanism because it has built in the safety mechanism to prevent you from overspicing something.
Yeah. So this is like sausage.
It has that built in.
2.0. You got your basic, like get the meat to lean to fat and the salt ratio down.
Yeah.
And then if you really want to play with the texturing and the harmonization, because you got your melody down, but if you want to add some harmony, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of sausage that we make a lot because we do end up freezing a lot of sausage. And this freezes well because they're dry spices, which brings me to the liquid ingredients.
Okay.
Which are, again, as diverse as you can possibly imagine. Honey, maple syrup, wine, cider, beer. Cheap beer is an excellent addition to sausage, by the way. But the thing to remember about them is that it messes with the sausage you intend to freeze. So, same with raw garlic. Garlic is an excellent thing to add to sausage. I don't like powdered garlic, maybe just because it cramps my style, but raw garlic is... Well, and powdered garlic doesn't taste like garlic. It tastes like something else, which maybe that's okay.
Like
but
MSG or something.
I think I resent its being called garlic because it just doesn't taste like garlic to me. But raw garlic and anything with alcohol in it kind of messes up your links if you freeze them because the alcohol's not quite going to freeze. I don't know what it is with garlic. There's oil in it or something. It's not freezing well. And it will be a notable reduction in the quality of the texture of the links that you have laboriously nursed into equally shaped links of perfect density. And it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
So if you're making a sausage you intend to freeze, keep out the alcohol and the fresh garlic.
Yeah.
And I would say even fresh herbs are not... They lose some of their magic in a frozen sausage, but...
Yeah.
These dried spices fare quite well in a freezer.
Yeah.
And it's basically the sausage you put in to the freezer is the sausage you will take out. You'll recognize it when you fry it up.
Okay, so liquids.
Yeah.
Beer, wine. You've done milk. Did you say that?
Yeah, you can do milk, especially if it's unpasteurized milk. It'll help with the fermentation if you want to do a little tanginess.
Yeah.
If you let the sausage sit anywhere after the stuffing that is not refrigeration for overnight, it will develop a sourly flavor that you will really like. It's actually the flavor that all commonly mass-produced sausages are trying to approximate when they add ascorbic acid. So they're adding the ingredient called sourliness. You can achieve that by the natural process of slow fermentation, just by leaving it out on your counter for your cooked sausages. And even if you let it hang in your fridge for several days, that the metabolic rate will be much slower, but it will still happen, and you'll get that slight tanginess that's just so good. It really helps with the harmony we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, liquid ingredients are awesome. Red wine, white wine, cider, dry stuff. I do like Rainier beer in an herb sausage.
Okay.
It's just crazy good. Hoppy beer, not so good.
Yeah.
Not a fan of hops anywhere. In fact,
we're not a fan of
or over hopped
in general.
You know, again, because we're going for harmony.
Yes.
The point of hops is their foil of sweet malt. Not that they taste like poison, which is bitter.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we know that they're bitter.
Yeah.
That's why they foil sweet malt. So you're thinking of ingredients as foils here.
Yeah.
Of each other, countering, harmonizing.
Yeah.
So, liquid ingredients. You want to be easy on the sugar. I don't have a magical, try this. Try the 1 ounce to a pound, quarter of an ounce to a pound of salt ratio when it comes to maple syrup and honey.
Sure. Okay.
It is easy to eat. It's easy to overdo those.
I don't know if honey sounds good to me, but
yeah, that might not be good. I don't know. Depends probably on the kind of honey. There's so much difference.
That's true.
But that's kind of the neat hedge about this little ratio is that it will be small enough that it won't bother you.
Yeah.
The quantity won't destroy the sausage. But it's also, there's enough of it there that you might not taste it with the first patty that you fry up as a test before you stuff it. But after you've had the sausage the 20th time, you're going to start to note, you will definitely have noticed those other spices, even if they're at that lower range.